flag. That's a flag. Awesome drive, man. Awesome drive.
It's nice to close out a race like that. That was awesome.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to 2023 season episode 19 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. As always, this podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media in 2014. Each weekly episode of the podcast offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and a lineup of special guests all throughout the year. This week, we break down the number 12 team's run in the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Steve, welcome back to this very exciting episode of the Team Blaney Podcast, because for the first time in the dreaded stat of 59 races, we get to celebrate a NASCAR Cup Series points victory by Ryan Blaney and this number 12 Team Penske Ford Mustang group. Wow, I can't imagine what it's like for them, but even just as fans, it just feels like a weight has been lifted, complete elation. We just kind of went through a whole range of emotions all throughout that race on Monday, sorry. And wow, here we are.
You know, somebody pointed out something online a little bit ago that Ryan, from the beginning of his career to his first win, was like 80 plus races. So he's actually had a longer streak already in his career.
Yep.
And the truth is if you look at statistics, and statistics are great. You know, there have been drivers who are Hall of Famers who've had streaks a lot longer than this, and it just kind of went through stretches of things that have happened. But everything clicked at the right weekend, at the right time, at the right race. We got to see almost exactly what I wanted to see, where he just kicked everybody's butt. And as we talk about it during the race recap, 160 some laps led. I mean, just crazy day where he got out front. And when he was out front, he did whatever he wanted, however he wanted to do it. Forget Clint Boyer and his, he's got short run speed. Now, as we're going to find out in the interview later on and through the race report, they had all the speed, and they were actually doing some fuel conservation at one point, and that's why he didn't pull away from everybody like he could have done. And at the end of the race, once he got out front, he was just toying with the 24 at that point. He did whatever he wanted.
So one other cool thing, I posted this up on some of our social channels, is the fact that now it has been 59 races since a points win, but this team did go to victory lane at Texas in the All-Star race last year. That race win happened during the week of the first of the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation's Driving for Good golf Top Golf outings there in Charlotte. So that happened last year. Ryan's next visit to Victory Lane also happens within that same week that they hold that Top Golf charity event. And for both of those events, you were able to be there in person. So you got to experience that charity event that we've been, promoting all year long so far. Take me there to the Top Golf and what you experienced this year, and any differences from this year to last year. It was all pretty much just total awesome. I'm assuming it was awesome last year, so it had to be awesome this year.
Yeah, it was. It was totally great. You get your booth, you get your 6. Everybody's got like 6 people in their booth, and then they've got the hole-in-one thing down the other end of the level, and then they had a room set up off to the side where they had the silent auction. But if you listen to episode 100 of our podcast, when we interviewed Ryan, we talked about all these things, and we talked about my less than legal golf club, or
I told people it was totally legal, in quotation marks, but yeah.
So, it was so funny because, he comes over booth to booth, take a picture with everybody. They take a professional picture. When he comes over to us right away, he actually asked us a couple questions about how the podcast went, how it's been going. And then I yanked that driver out of the bag because we had talked about it 2 weeks earlier. And at first his eyes lit up and he goes, "Can I try it?" Like, heck yeah. He says, I'm just going to hit one. Cause he's just starting, we're at the one end of the Top Golf, and he's just starting his way down. So he didn't want to spend too much time because he wants to go actually hit some golf balls too and play with his team. But if you saw the video, you saw the third shot. on the video that we posted. He actually hit 2 other ones. He kept hitting him until he got one right, basically. And I will say, I don't know if you can hear it on the sound, but somewhere in there, it might have been on the second shot. Actually, I said that it's taken me years to learn how to hit that club. So, I mean, for him to hit any of them straight was going to be kind of tough. But it was nice. I asked him, I said, is it okay we post this? And he goes, sure. He says, friends are making fun of my golf swing all the time. But he actually hit pretty good one on there. And we had a blast, had a laugh. I can't wait to see, because his photographer, if you look at the video, there's that thing where the balls come out of. His photographer had knelt down behind it, and she was taking a picture up at him as he was making his swing. So cool. I can't wait to see what that looks like. Patty from the foundation took great care of us all weekend long. Just kind of set us up with some things for the weekend also. But she was great host as usual, running around the place like crazy. Aaron and Emma came by, Leah came by, all visited with us for a couple minutes when they could, saw how everybody was doing. And of course, we were with Jerry and Kirsten Mariotti. The Mariottis are awesome. They love coming to the outing now. They've been 2 years in a row, and Kirsten is great at online bidding. With the silent auction. Yep. She was juggling all kind of things, had a couple ideas of what they wanted. And if you go to Jerry's Facebook page, Jerry actually posted a picture. They won the bottle of wine with that picture of all the Blaneys on it. He's not going to drink it out of it. He's not going to open it. He went over. He actually literally went over to a couple of the girls and asked them where that wine was from. I think he asked Ryan's girlfriend actually where that wine was from, because he just wants to buy a bottle of it to try it. Because he's not going to open up that bottle with that beautiful picture on there and mess it up. So, a great event. Like I said, you get a chance. Hopefully, we'll do it again next year. And if anybody who wants to experience it, get a hold of the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. And I saw the Team Blaney podcast was on the Wall of Fame over there. So hopefully they'll be getting that card out to you. That was a nice little thing that they do, like I said, every year. So check out our social medias for some of the pictures, the events, the videos of the swings. We had a wonderful time.
Yeah, definitely a little bit jealous. Tried to live it through your guys' experience. That we weren't able to get up there this year to do some work obligations, but it turned out my wife Tara and Kirsten actually were bidding against each other on one of the auction items. Mm-hmm. Tara was able to come home with that. Yeah, since we weren't going to be able to be there, we definitely got our donation in to get on the Wall of Fame. So I got a couple of those back behind me in the office from last year, and looking forward to getting that one from this year. It was a great souvenir. Really do hope that they can get that event back together again for its 3rd annual event next year. That Driving for Good top golf outing out there in Charlotte. Always a good time. Now the plan was for you to stay through the weekend and get to experience all the pomp and circumstance of the Coca-Cola 600. You did get to see a pretty cool truck race, and we talked that the truck series at Charlotte, and honestly all 3 series at Charlotte, put on a really, really great show. And so you did get to at least see some on-track activity with the race with the truck series.
Yeah, the truck race Friday night was pretty good. And they had a couple late cautions, kind of made it more interesting. But Zane was really going for it at one point, and he tried a little too hard there. But overall, it was a good night of racing. We made sure we went to that one because we knew what the weather was going to be like the rest of the weekend. So we knew Yeah.
So unfortunately, you got there on Sunday. You got to hang out a little bit, got to meet some folks, got to meet Taylor Kitchen, who was on one of our earlier episodes, who's a fellow member of the NASCAR Twitter community, NASCAR media community out there. And really good that you got to meet up with her after interviewing her earlier this year. But then the rain kind of dampened your parade because you guys also had some work obligations you needed to get back to. So you weren't there for the big moment, but you did get back home in time to watch everything on TV.
Yeah, Monday was a travel day no matter what we did. And the only thing that we thought about is if they would have scheduled the start of the race at like noon, like they a lot of times do on a Monday, we would have tried it. Maybe tried a couple hours and then start driving, or seen how quick it went and then start driving. But because they had to put the Xfinity race onto Sunday too, it just, it changed everything, and we decided to just go ahead, come home, and actually got home before the race even started. So I got to note taking like normal. But yeah, we did see the Jet Dryer 200. Them boys worked really hard. They try really hard to make that track dry, but they had certain windows they were talking about, and if they could get it dry, it takes over 2 hours, and that's without any sunlight or help. And it just kept drizzling and misty drizzle, and it was really just the weirdest because it was a tropical storm that blew in from the coast. So it just, yeah, it was really bad weather pattern.
So you teased it a little bit as we were talking about an interview that we're going to have a little bit later, and I'll just go ahead and spoil it. We're going to have Tony Palmer, who is the race engineer for Ryan Blaney's number 12 car. He's going to come and talk with us. We've been doing these interviews the last couple of years. We bring on members of the crew, talk a little bit about their backstory, and the great thing here too is Tony gives us some really cool insights on this victory in the Coca-Cola 600, some insights into the strategy and fuel mileage and what goes into calls, what kind of data and analysis tools do they have on the pit box, and some really neat things, and also some really cool stories about how he got into racing. But I'm really excited to get into our race recap. We've been able to do 4 of these episodes, including the All-Star race last year, where we get to recap Ryan Blaney victory. And I'm really excited to do number 5 here. So, Steve, let's jump into it. Unfortunately, or fortunately for you, since you don't mind when there's no practice, there wasn't really any on-track activity to talk about going into this weekend.
No, this weekend it was rained out on Saturday to practice the qualifying. And like I always say, I don't care. They don't need it. And they prove they don't need it once again. Jonathan and the boys, they line up 8th to start on Sunday with the metric. The 24 is on the pole, and we got pit stall 26, which is has an opening in front and the 7 car behind him. Of course, we get the stages of 100, 200, 300, and then the ending at lap 400. 14 sets of tires, fuel run of like 61 to 65 laps, and of course they do the dreaded competition caution. I think it was end up at lap 30. Without any practice or anything like that, we know that it all depends on how well they think that car's set up under the weather conditions they're going to have and the track conditions they're going to have. And at lap 2, he clears the 23, gets to 7th, and at lap 3, passes the 8 car, gets to 6th. Lap 4, he's all the way up to 4th. I lost track of how many guys he was passing at that point.
It happened so quick.
Yeah. And he's battling back and forth with like the 11, and then 11 passes him, but then he passes the 4 and he's up to 4th again. And at lap 10, he says he's a little bit free here. So at lap 15, the 11 car actually takes the lead off the 24. So now we start to see whose adjustments were better than whose at the start of the race. Lap 18, they pass the 8 to get to 3rd. Lap 25, past the 24, they get to 2nd. Lap 30, the 20 car, who's pretty strong at this point, he passes, and Ryan goes back to 3rd here. And lap 34, the 20 gets up there, and he actually takes the lead. That's how fast he was. And then lap 35 here is when we pass the 11, get to 2nd, and we get the competition caution all at the same time. So Ryan is talking about the entry to 1 is a little tight. The chattering in the rears going into 3 into the bumps, and he needs to be a little tighter in 3 and 4. So they're pitting in 2nd. They come out 2nd. Now, these pit times, we're going to talk about this right now, because I've been going to the NASCAR app, waiting 5-10 laps. All of a sudden, they'll post the pit times, okay? The NASCAR app must be using it from when they enter the box to when they exit the box, from what we understand. TV was using, what'd you say, from when the gun first hits?
Yeah, basically when they engage the car, the pit crew engages the car. So this is going to be a little bit different. You're going to hear my times because that's what I got off the NASCAR app. Think half a second to a second faster, maybe. As we find out from listening to in our interview with Tony later on, that they were all sub 10-second stops, actually. I have it at 10.27. Now, like I said, that is from going into the box to out of the box. The timing that they use on TV, I think it showed it like a 9.75 or something like that, right? Yeah, 9.5, 9.7, 9.3. Yep. This was arguably the best performance by this pit crew all year long. They've been really solid this year, but as far as like consistently fast, stops, no mistakes. Man, they hit it out of the park in this race.
Yeah. Jonathan says we did a little bit of air pressure to help the tight. And there was a little bit of miscommunication on the adjustment here, so that he asked Ryan to adjust more using his brake bias to help him. The choose is the leader is the 24. He takes the bottom, and Ryan in P2 takes the top. And the restart lap 41, he clears the 24 out of 2, and we're up to first. So now we're just like logging laps out there in the lead. Lap 52, he's got a 1 second lead. That lap 63, the 20 passes the 24 for second. So the 20 is a guy to keep an eye on here. Lap 70, Ryan says he's a little loose. And we get lap 74 caution for the 84 car, who had some issues this race. Ryan
the whole motor club had some issues this race.
No, my God, that's true. They did, didn't they? Ryan says he's a number and a half, possibly to get it a little tighter. So they're pitting, they're coming in, they're doing a smaller adjustment because it's going to be a shorter run. The time on the app here, once again, is 9.97. So like I said, it's probably 9.25 or something like that on the TV side. They're pitting second, they come out second. So they restart with the 24 taking the top, Ryan taking the bottom. And at lap 80, it sorts out the P2. Lap 99 is trying to pass the 24. The 20 ends up passing him because there's like a three-way scrum there for a second. So he gets to third there in stage 1, and the 24 wins the stage. Ryan says the changes were good. Just tighten it a hair and see where that goes. We're pitting third to come out third. And I don't know, somebody stayed out. Oh, yeah, the 34 car stays out. So actually P4 for the choose cone here because the 34 stays out.
Yeah, it's the front row cars in this race. They both decided to make some noise by staying out at some interesting times.
Well, what's interesting later on is the 38. For the 38, it actually worked out. He lost his positions a little bit, but he was able to hold up and put himself in a decent position at the end. 34, not so much. So we restart lap 105 here. He's in the low lane behind the 34, which kind of is not a good thing because even though you're pushing the guy, he's wiggling way too much. But he sorts out the fourth at lap 109. He passes the 45, gets to third, and 24 is now leading the 20. And at lap 115 here, the 24 and the 20 battle in front of Ryan. 45 ends up coming past Ryan here. Ryan's in fourth still. Lap 117, the 20 takes the lead. Ryan passes the 24. 24 starting to fall backwards. So Ryan gets to third, and we got a light mist. Lap 136, he says it's feeling fairly balanced. And at lap 143, let's see, the 2. Is this where the 2 hits the wall? And he has to pit because of it. And Ryan says we're generally getting tight here. So the lap 147, we're pitting here, and this is a green flag cycle here. We're third entering the cycle, and this is like a 10.47 stop. So once again, this is probably sub 10. Lap 150, we're in seventh. 4 cars haven't pitted yet, but he should end up P3 behind the 45 and the 6 when it all cycles through here. And then we get a lap 155, a caution for the rain, with the 45 leading, and Ryan is in third.
What's interesting is, this race is so long that I almost forgot that there was an actual rain delay within the race as well, and not just being delayed to start, being delayed a day, but it lasted a little while. They all got out of their cars.
Yeah, they got out I didn't time it here, but they did go red flag at lap 158. So when they get back in the car, Jonathan says we're going to stick with what we talked about. So this is something that happened, while they're out of the car because there's no communication. But the first thing I hear is we're going to stick with what we talked about at number 3. And Ryan says 10-4. So interesting thing, the 20 had an unapproved adjustment during the rain delay. I don't know what they did, but they did something they weren't supposed to.
So TV said that they were cutting away part of the wrap on the hood or something like that. And that, I don't know if they were trying to smooth something or they noticed something and they're like, oh, let's kind of move this piece. But I guess that is a no-no. It's an unapproved adjustment to even mess with probably anything. And I guess, I don't know, maybe there could be some aerodynamic advantages, but that definitely puts the 20 has been fast all day. He kind of had a little bit of a longer run car and was able to make up spots after pit stops. So probably a good thing that this happened.
That's what I was going to say here. The reason I wrote it all down was, they tell him, Josh tells him to the 20 to the rear front approved, and Ryan goes, copy that. He's kind of happy about it because it was somebody he had to race hard with. So they actually stay out here as part of the strategy. The 45, the 12, the 19, the 99, the 9 all stay out. So on the choose cone, the 45 takes the top, Ryan takes the bottom. Restart lap 163, sorts out the third, and then we get a caution for the 84 again. And I think this is the one where the 84 helps collect the 42 and the 43.
Yeah, so the 42 and 43 already had some problems where they both in the same lap ran over some debris and took out both their radiators. The 84 had that crash early on in the race. But yeah, this one takes out Jimmy and Noah Gregson. It looked like Jimmy just didn't realize Noah was on the outside, and man, it was a bad day, like we said, for Legacy Motor Club. And I think Jimmy, even after the race, kind of said, he really missed that they didn't get any practice. Felt like, his performance in the sim wasn't up to par, just felt a little bit underprepared for the race. And man, unfortunately for that team, it showed. And I think they're going to struggle the rest of the year until Toyota comes in 2024.
Yeah. So for the choose cone here, the 45 is taking the top. Ryan is P3 for the choose, taking the bottom, putting him on the front row. And I start taking note of who's pushing him, because this ends up, if you get somebody lined up behind you and give you a good push, it makes a big difference here. The 19 is actually pushing the 45, and the 6 is actually the guy pushing Ryan. So we get the restart lap 169, and they're racing the 45 pretty hard here, but the 45 does pass. So Ryan's up to second. At lap 175, we had a caution for the 8 car, and he spun out, and so Jonathan says that their bed's probably made. They're probably going to have to stay out here till the end of the stage here. So the choose cone, the 45 takes the top, Ryan takes the bottom. They got the 17 behind the 45, and they got the 9 and the 11 behind Ryan. They restart lap 181, and we get to the lead here with a nice push.
Huge push from Chase Elliott. Man,
yes,
they worked great together.
They did. And then we get a caution at lap 186 for the 11 and the 9.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to get into that now?
We can just do it real quickly, just because there's been kind of breaking news, as we went to record this on Tuesday, and I didn't realize, I guess with a short week, they had to make the decision quick, but I mean, there's all kinds of internet sleuths and people with screen grabs that make it look like the 6 is the one that turned the 9. If you actually watch the video, the contact with the 6 doesn't happen until after the 9 comes down off the wall, straightens his car out, then hooks it left into the right rear of the 11, sending the 11 straight into the wall. The 9 also gets collected again, and his race is over because of this. And man, it's just, I know these guys are making split-second decisions, but immediately calls right back to Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson. And though Bubba's looked way more egregious because he had to go a little bit further down the track to make the move, I say the result ends up being the same. And right away I said they gotta suspend the 9. I don't want to see the guy suspended, but if they're going to be consistent, they got to do it.
Okay, Bubba's looked more egregious because they were out in the open more. Yeah, they were more spread out at that point, and there wasn't anybody really racing near them. This time there was actually, the 6 car included, a couple cars around them. But if you watch it, Chase goes basically 3 lanes to his left to find him. And it's funny, as Dawsonville pool room is on Twitter going, oh, but if you look at the data, he hit the brakes, and how could he hit him if he hit the brakes and blah, blah, blah. No, that data, if you read it correctly, he hit the brakes after he hit him so that he could avoid him. The trick is to rear hook them in the right rear and then have them spin around your nose, and you keep going.
Keep going. Yeah.
And that's the key. And it didn't work. He messed that up, and it took himself out. So it's there. The data's there. It shows that Denny did what he did after, right afterward or on the radio, and then of course on his podcast today, to make sure that everybody knew that it should be a foul. And Chase is, generally is a good guy. We've actually met,
absolutely.
Talked to him. He really is, and he's good friends with Ryan. And But this is a heat of the moment thing that he did, and it's something that he should not be able to get away with. They're at high speeds, and NASCAR said they made a rule for this basically. So it was egregious. It definitely looked egregious, and the data backed it up. So he gets what he gets. I think. I don't think anybody really can defend the actions.
Yeah, like you said, he's a great guy in the car, out of the car. Great friends with Ryan. I did not wish a suspension on him. But unfortunately, that is what has happened. NASCAR came out and announced that the driver in the number 9 car is going to be suspended for the race at Gateway. Really cool opportunity here is that Spire Motorsports is letting Corey LaJoie go and fill in for this race for Hendrick Motorsports in the number 9 car. So probably the first time Corey's going to be in super top-notch equipment. This is also happening because the Xfinity Series is in Portland, so the Josh Berry isn't going to be able to be in town to play fill-in for yet again for the 9 cars he did earlier in the year when Chase was out with injury. Man, this is going to really hurt Chase's chances. He was on the cusp of possibly being able to point his way into the playoffs if he needed to. This pretty much ends that. And I think he's going to win a race anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an interesting one here where, when Bubba was suspended that race last year, he had already missed the playoffs. He wasn't in the playoffs. They were in like the owners playoffs, I think, at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so automatically now after the suspension, people are talking about, well, are they still going to give him the waiver now? Because, Hendrick Motorsports announced, we're not going to appeal this. They need to be consistent on the rules. We understand, but they are going to apply for that championship or playoffs waiver. So we'll see. I'm assuming NASCAR. They're going to grant it, but
they'll grant it.
If there was ever a time to question that, maybe now would be the time. But it's fine. Sitting home. He already did it for injury. Now he's going to do it because of an on-track incident. It's huge punishment to sit out of one of these races, but I'm really, really glad that they're going to be consistent on this call. And, that puts everybody on notice, even Ryan, Ryan, can get angry behind the wheel too. It's just, you can't act immediately then, or if you're going to do it, don't make it a hook, save it for a short track, save it for a way, maybe hold somebody up. You just can't go out there and do that because, man, it's so dangerous. I know Denny's saying, his neck hurts and all that stuff, but it was a really pretty big impact straight on into the wall.
Stacking pennies should be really interesting this week. Corey, I think they haven't recorded or they were already recording it after the announcement. So it'd be interesting to hear his insights on what he's going to go through this week. And of course, Ryan Flores is on that podcast, and we're going to get to hear about how him and the boys were all dogs all race long. That'll be great to hear. You always want to hear. Everybody always gets to hear about what happened when something goes wrong, but now we get to hear about 8 or 10 pit stops that went right all night long. So that'd be great to hear on stacking quarters. Actually,
I saw that. Great quip from Bubba.
Stacking quarters. So caution for those two at the lap 186 here. And Jonathan says same story here. I'm going to ride it out to the end of the stage. Ryan takes the top with the 45 pushing, and the 17 is below Ryan. And we restart lap 191. We're racing the 17. The 17 clears, so Ryan's in second. At 194, the 4 passes back to third here. And lap 196, the 6 passes back to fourth. And at lap 197, the 22 passes back to fifth. And what happened is a couple guys with fresher tires got there. And
I was going to say, if people don't remember prior to our discussion there on Chase and the 11 car, they had stayed out on older tires. They had a little bit of a buffer here, but it was potentially a matter of time when some of these other guys caught up. I thought it was early enough in the race to see this is an experiment time. Like they probably weren't going to fall out of the top 10, but maybe it's worth seeing what they could maybe have in their toolbox later on in the race when it comes to tire strategy.
Here's something really cool here. So we get to lap 200. We get the caution for the 78 right at the end of the stage here. 17 wins the stage. Ryan's fifth. It's the 17, the 4, the 6, the 22, and the 12. So the Fords are not dead at the mile and a half just yet. That's 5 Fords at the front of the field at the end of stage 2.
And some of that was on strategy there, but you'll see at different parts of the race, though, there were a lot of Fords running in the top 10. I don't think that they've figured out, how to fix their aero disadvantage. I think that's still going to be inherent with this front nose, but I do think they did find out at least something for Charlotte, something in the setup.
Mhm.
Hopefully it's something they can use going forward when they get back to Kansas and Las Vegas and Homestead and some of these other places. But at least on this one, the simulation, whatever they needed, they hit on it this week. And it's pretty clear to me that Ford shared that data around with everybody going into this race.
Yeah. So Jonathan and Ryan are discussing the adjustments here. They're pitting in fifth, out fifth. Like I said, I have a 10.410 according to NASCAR. So once again, that's probably a sub 10. The 47 and the 8 stayed out. So we're seventh for the choose cone here. 47 taking the top, Ryan taking the top. They restart at lap 207. And pretty much within the first lap, he's up to fourth. And up to 8, the 4 takes the lead off of these guys. So lap 309, Ryan passes the 47, who falls backward. Ryan's up to third. At lap 215, he passes the 22 pretty easily, too. The 22 kind of knew that Ryan was faster and gave up the spot, so Ryan's up to second here. Lap 220, Ryan says we're a little bit snug. And at lap 224, he passes the 4 car up to first. And I put on the Discord chat a mail truck because we're hauling the mail. At lap 228, he's 1.2 ahead of the 4, and Ryan says it's a little loose, and then Jonathan says, copy that. At lap 231, we get a caution for the 20. So Ryan says you need to be a number tighter, hitting in first and out third, but this is a 10.176. And I will say this again and again during some of these pit stops. That's a sub 9. Like I said, with what we've learned about how they time these pit stops, and sub 10. It's a 9 in the 9-second bracket. But the 24 car and the way that the end of pit road timing line is very, very, very confusing. When you're watching it on TV and they show you the 24 leaving the box, their line was literally, as we find out here. When we talk later on with Tony, 15 feet outside the box, something like that, I think it was. And that line was not hard to hit. He didn't have to really hit the accelerator. He just had to move. Where everybody else is decelerating going into the box and having to accelerate coming out of their box. The 24 didn't have to worry about speeding off pit road. He just punches it, and it looks like an optical illusion because he punches it. He beats Ryan and everybody else to that line, and then
and it's not even necessarily a line on the pavement. I kept hearing them, and you'll hear Tony refer to it as a camera. There's a camera at the end that they trigger as they're going through there. So on TV, we kept seeing Ryan most of the race, beating these guys off pit road, especially even, the second half of this race. And it just seemed like, all right, we're out with the lead this time. And it's like, no, it's the 24. And so that way the 24 could come in fourth, come out with first almost every time. And they were on, they were on fire too. They were probably the fastest crew all night long. So props to them. But man, that number one stall is so advantageous for sure.
Yeah. They said it was worth 2 spots almost every time, no matter what. No matter where he came in, he was going to gain 2 spots as long as their pit stop was clean. Really makes you think that other tracks that line is out there further. There have been tracks where somebody punched it, got to the line, and actually sped before they got to the line.
That's Priest, the 41 car. I think it was they're up. The thing there was they had a box that was ahead of the number 1 pit stall. They eliminated that, and they didn't realize it. So yeah, he would get up to speed enough to where they were speeding before they got to the line, and so maybe that's not the place where you're going to want to pick the number 1 stall.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Maybe they should adjust all these lines where the number 1 box has to accelerate a little bit, because it really was. He literally just had to accelerate 5 yards. So the 24, let's see here. Yeah, that's a huge advantage in pit stall 1 here. The 24 takes the top. Ryan takes the bottom here. With the 22 pushing, which is great. The 4 is pushing the 24 here. And they tell Ryan we're close on the fuel number to the end of the stage here. And this is like where I get with the TV guys and short run speed. They only got short run speed and the long run this and the long run that. Well, no, as I'm listening to the scanner, they're literally telling Ryan to run slower. So he hits lap 236, 22 pushes him all the way out to the lead. And Ryan, basically asks where the 45 is running from second. So he's out in front of the 45, but now he's running lap times to just maintain. And, Josh is giving him that information on just how far back and what line, how far back and what line, how far back and what line. And Ryan is running laps on lifting a little early, or maybe not, or getting on the throttle a little later, or whatever it is to conserve fuel. At lap 255, Jonathan says, keep doing what you're doing on fuel. If the 45 gets by you, that's fine. They literally tell him that. We're just trying to get to the end of the stage. At lap 262, the 45 seems to be maintaining fuel also. So, he got within a second, but then he didn't try to push it. At lap 267, Johnson says, if you want to be a little more aggressive now, go ahead. And at lap 270, the 45 does his little bobble off the wall.
Yeah. And yeah, I think Ryan kind of checks out at this point. I think I made a joke on Twitter that, basically Jonathan came over the radio and told Ryan it was time to drop the hammer. So, but you just saw that lead. I mean, the bobble definitely helped, but yeah, he kind of stretches it out to a big lead here. And I'm like, you know what? I think Clint might be a little wrong here. Plus, you mentioned that pit stop where they did lose a couple spots. Maybe it was a little bit, just slightly longer. They did make an adjustment in that one too, because they were trending loose throughout the race. I think there's one time where they talked about being tight. So they did put a wrench in the car, I think, on that stop. So I thought between that and then finally being able to go out and run his true speed, it was like, okay, man, I think we got something tonight. Yeah.
We get to, top 272. He's like, I'm a second and a half ahead of the 45, but at lap 276, we get a caution for the 6 and the 51. He says a little bit free here. Johnson says we're only going to have 20 laps left. So, if you want to leave it, but they come in first, they come out second, and it was a 10.21. So once again, it was probably below 10.
Yeah. Another sub stop. Yeah. Sub 10 stop. But the 24
right at the end of pit road, right? Ryan says it's not even fair. He literally says that it's not even fair. So Ryan, 24 takes the bottom with the 4 pushing. Ryan takes the top with the 45 pushing. We get a restart lap 280. He sorts out the P2 here. At lap 282, he passes the 24 up to first. Josh gets on the radio and says, nice work. Fastest lap of the day. And when you look it up, it was his fastest lap of the day. And we're, almost 300 laps into the race.
We've seen this happen over and over again in this race. So I'm not always super confident during races, but I just said that last run, we saw what he could do when he was able to run, to his peak performance. And we've seen him, start on restarts in the second position, third position, the fourth position, the fifth position, and almost every single time race back up to the lead. And, it's been so long since that points win, but I think this is kind of the moment where I'm like really thinking like we can do this. By we, I mean them, but Ryan can do this. Josh and Jonathan, they can do this. They can win this race.
So the lap 285, Josh is giving coverage of what the 45 is doing behind him here, and basically he covers him the whole rest of the stage. At lap 300, Ryan wins stage 3. Ryan says, "I'm just loose. Number, maybe a number and a half."
Now, this team led the series in stage wins last year. Didn't win a race, though. They've been extremely consistent all year long. Haven't won a stage yet. So this was the first stage win of the season for the 12 team, and gets a really, really needed playoff point that they've been missing all year long.
They're pitting coming in first. They come out second. They ran a 9.943 stop, which, like I said, once again, that's the NASCAR app. It's probably more like 9.25 or something.
I think this might be that. So
stop of the race.
Penske, shared that Pure Tech stop of the race. So I think it was like a 9.4 or something. So I think that might have been their fastest stop of the day. And I think it comes here. And it just shows you, we talked about already, like, man, they're just grinding it out on pit road, doing everything they can. Super fast stops still come out second.
Here's the thing. The 24 was fourth coming down pit road. Once again, though, that pit stall is probably worth almost a second, and they come out first. Probably had the same exact pit time as Ryan, to tell you the truth, but because of the pit stall selection. So, the choose cone here, 24 takes the top with the 5 and the 54 pushing. Ryan takes the bottom with the 45 and the 4 pushing. We restart lap 308, and we get the lead by turn 4. Lap 310, the 45 is pushing Ryan. Lap 320, he's half second ahead of the 45. 324, the 45 gets loose in 4 again. Goes through the grass. And Ryan stretches it out to a 2-second lead on him at that point. At lap 330, the 8 is actually now up to P2, but 2.8 seconds back of Ryan. I just wanted to see it go green at this point. Just go green the rest of the race. Let's get one green flag pit stop in, make it a good one.
Exactly.
Blow out the lead a little more, and then just,
Yeah, with the lead that they had, I thought if they just had a solid stop, no mistakes, they'd still come back out with the lead.
Yeah.
And let's just win it from here.
Yeah, lap 335, and Ryan's talking about adjustments for their pit stop. Need to tighten up a bit, maybe a number. He's 3.1 seconds ahead at this point. And at lap 342, we get a caution for the 34 tire. And Kate, my wife, sings the song. You know the song. It was a fine time to leave loose wheel.
A loose wheel.
Yeah. So we're pinning in first and come out fourth. And once again, the 24 car was fourth coming in. And, Ryan does get passed by the 45 and the 8. But once again, it was a 10.31 second stop. And I have in here that they actually did put a wrench in there, too. So it was probably a sub 10-second stop again with putting a wrench in the car. And, the 45 and the 8 just had extremely good stops themselves, probably. So it was nothing that anybody did wrong. The stop was actually solid, really good stop, fast stop. Jonathan tells them they put wedge in there, air pressure. They're trying to stay ahead on the long run, stay ahead of the track. The 24 takes the top and Ryan takes the bottom here behind the 45. They restart lap 349. He sorts to fifth here. Kind of a wild, crazy restart. Lap 355 passes the 19, gets to fourth, and then we get a caution at lap 354 for the 4 car. Jonathan says, hey, we got 8 laps on the tires. So what adjustment we want to make? We're pitting in fourth. They come out third. This one I have listed 10.143. So once again, like I said, it's probably around 9.5. 38 stayed out here. 38 took the top. Ryan takes the bottom behind the 24.
What were your immediate thoughts? So the 34 did this earlier in the race, and it did not go well for them. Obviously, Zane, we're kind of fans of Zane there because of the work he does with Josh on the truck side. But man, I was like, oh no, this, it's a Ford team kind of getting in the way of a Ford team that has a really good shot to win this race. And oh man, I was a little bit frustrated.
It's a rolling roadblock, and I just don't understand. Like, I know the strategy, it kind of works for them because they lose some spots, but then they hit later on and get fresh tires and get themselves back up. And it works out for them in the long run, but overall it's a dangerous thing because if he doesn't do a very good job with the restart, and all of a sudden he just stacks up the line, and you get in a mess behind him trying to get around him, and that's the one thing I know about Ryan taking the bottom here. I kind of thought, well, maybe they'll get around him by going underneath him. So we restart lap 362. 24 does take the lead here, but we get a caution for a spin in 4 with the 16 and 22, and the 21 gets involved in this. But Ryan's up to second as this all happens. So he had done a great job on that restart. Like I said, pushing the 24, getting past the 38. They go ahead and stay out. 24 takes the top with the 5 and the 45 pushing. Ryan takes the bottom with the 19 and the 8 pushing. And we get a restart at lap 369, but he only sorts out to P2 here on this restart, and we get a caution for the 2 car and spinning on the backstretch. So we're staying out here.
This is like the absolute definition of cautions, breeding cautions. And honestly, this is kind of a point in the race, though, where I was talking about being optimistic, and I'm thinking back. I was like, you know what? At this point, 6 out of Ryan's 7 wins in the Cup Series have all been dramatic, all been kind of crazy races, late restarts. Even in the Xfinity Series, a lot of his wins involved like having to hold off guys through multiple restarts as well. So I was like, maybe this isn't a bad thing. Maybe this is a good omen because only that Atlanta race where he tracked down Kyle Larson by saving and managing his tires and then eventually blowing him away at the end of the race for that win. All of his other ones have been pretty dramatic. So for once in my life watching a race, I'm spinning things to the positive. Things are going to be okay. So I was okay with this, but man, it's just so many back to back to back to back. And we're seeing teammates getting taken out, the 21 and the 22, and then the 2 now, fences it or, noses it into the inside fence. And it's just, man, hate to see that, but at least the 12 is still on the front row.
Yeah. So we get for this shoes cone, the 24 taking the top with the 5 and the 45 pushing. Ryan on the bottom with the 19 and the 8 pushing. Excuse me. And restarts at lap 374, and I mean, caution behind him for the 5. But during all this, Ryan took the lead. So he was side by side, but he got just a nose out there, took the lead.
Just what he needed, just to get the control of the race.
Yeah. 5, the 20, the 22, the 54, the 10 were all involved. Of course, we're staying out here. Ryan takes the top, and this is where I think where this thing happens with the 19 too. Ryan takes the top. He's got the 19 and the 45 pushing him. 24 takes the bottom with the 8 and the 41. The radio is real quiet. I noticed that. Restart lap 379, and by turn 1, we're clear. So, like I said, if on TV, if you saw this is probably where Ryan got out in front. The 19 gave him a great push, and then Ryan wiggled. And as he wiggled, everybody went, whoa, and kind of backed off a hair because you don't want to be part of the accident, driving into it. And that's part of how he, I think, got clear of everybody by turn 1. By lap 385, he's 0.7 ahead, within 5-6 laps. And Josh is talking about where the 24 is running. At lap 390, he's 0.65 ahead. At lap 392, we're about half a tenth every lap.
All right, I was super, super positive. I've changed. My mindset has changed now.
Yeah, just pulling away. Lap 395, there's no gain from anybody. 5
I'm still
to go.
nervous. I'm still sweating, still pacing around the room.
By lap 397, it's over 1 second advantage.
Is this really going to happen? Is this really the night? Is somebody going to hit the wall? Is our wheel going to fall off? Mike was so fast.
Mike Joyce is crazy because at the end he's trying to add drama. Like they're in turn 4 and he says, "Oh, he's closed it to 0.8 of nothing." No, go away, buddy. By that point, Ryan was backing off because he just wanted to have fun, and he knew exactly where the 24 was, and they finished it off in real big letters. I wrote on my note card, "Just win."
I just wanted them to get to the white flag, and they did it. Lean. I knew then that was finally when I could, exhale, take that big breath, and realize that they're finally going back to victory lane after all this time. And man, it was it's like I celebrate for about a couple seconds, and then just the way that I'm immediately, on Twitter, getting on Twitter, on Facebook, all our social media, pumping out stuff because, these wins for Ryan are some of our biggest social media nights of the year. And I'd love to get more people involved in Team Blaney and follow us. So that's like a big, basically like a big recruitment night for us. And it's just so much fun because you see all the people kind of come out of the woodwork celebrating, different, celebrities and people from other sports and other, Joseph Newgarden who won the 500, I'm just trying to tweet out, share, comment on everything we can. And that's like my fun at the end of these races. And man, talk about a victory celebration, Ryan still true to form. I wasn't sure if there was a time when I thought maybe he was going to do a burnout. It was this. But saw a lot of respect on social media for him once again for doing the almost the kind of like a Polish victory lap. He doesn't go the whole way around the track, but he goes down, turns around, waves to the fans, drives down on the driver's side and stops. And then, so he was inspired a little bit here from Joseph Newgarden, Team Penske teammate who won the Indianapolis 500, who ran up into the stands, which was a hit. With folks on TV, social media, and with the fans in the stands. So what's Ryan do? Climbs out of the car. One difference though between him and Joseph, Ryan got all of his equipment off and took his helmet off, gets the checkered flag, and Ryan jumps up in there and celebrates with the folks in the stands. And I'm just sitting there saying, like, he's a man of the people. He's a man of the people, and he's celebrating with the people. And what were you thinking? Were you even watching? Were you already running around the room? What were you were
Yeah, I think I may have been in the corner crying. Just the joy, elation. We were definitely on our feet the last couple laps. The dog was like, "Why are you guys yelling at the TV? What the hell's wrong with you people?" Yeah, just so beautiful. because that's the way we want to see him win races. Just pull out in front of everybody and blow him away because they know that he's that good. And he talked about being comfortable at certain points during the race, like, with what their adjustments they were making. And the more comfortable he was, the faster he's going to go because he knows that he can trust the car to do what he needs it to do. And, major kudos to Team 12. That's Jonathan calls his guys Team 12, everybody on that team, because they put it together. They put together a great night. And what's great about it is once you do it once, it's like opening the bottle of ketchup. You've got it open, and now it'll just keep pouring out of there once you got it going. So,
and I don't want to make it sound negative, but especially over this winless streak here, the biggest criticism of Ryan Blaney has been that he can't close out races, that they have speed early on, especially last year, winning all those stages. And Jonathan even mentioned this in their post-race comments about, we won a lot of stages last year, but they weren't able to close out races. They went to work over the off season. I think it's actually even something you saw during the off season. I thought maybe this was just promo material, but you saw a lot more posts of Ryan in the gym. Jonathan specifically mentions this, that Ryan's hit the weights over the offseason and made it a mission to make sure that he is super physically fit and able at the end of a 600-mile race to still be up on the wheel, still be in it mentally and focused. And you saw that, dominant all day long. Yeah, they had some issues with not being able to win the race off pit road every time and continue to control the race. But, restart after restart, after a couple of laps, they were able to retake the lead and kind of control everything all the way down to the end. And just to see him pull away in that last run, pull away by the distance that he did, like I said, reminded me of Atlanta a little bit, where he was dominant at the end, but he was dominant all day long. This is what every single Blaney fan, every single media member that's criticized him has wanted him to do, and he finally did it. And he did it in a crown jewel event, one of the biggest races of the year, in the Coca-Cola 600. We talked a little bit about getting emotional there at the end of this. I want to play this clip from Ryan's interview on track with Jamie Little, where I don't know what it was. The dust kicked up in the room. Something happened here because I think a tear was shed by nearly every Blaney fan that heard this clip.
You start to get to feel like you can't win anymore, and when you don't win in a while, and kind of get hard. So just super thankful to the 12 guys for believing in me, and thank you guys for sticking around. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
That says everything about what kind of person that he is. That's emotion that, some guys show, some guys won't show. But it kind of shows the love for each other that those guys have, all the snipers that want to snipe all the time about this guy and that guy, and we should get rid of this guy and that guy should be fired. Forget about all that. This is about a team and the way they're together and the way they, you lose together and you win together. And they really put it together, and they're going to keep doing that now. That's the thing. Once you know that you can trust each other, and put your trust in each other's hands, anything's possible. And they showed it, and now they're just going to keep showing it.
Yeah, really, really incredible to see this team evolve, see them be so good last year and just on the cusp of winning, never being able to get there. Really, really proud of everybody, top to bottom, Ryan, Jonathan, Josh Williams up in the spotter stand, the road crew. The pit crew, once again, there's not much more that they could have done in that race. I don't know if they ate their Wheaties. I don't know what was in the water there in Mooresville this past week. But whatever it was, they need to replicate that the rest of the year, because now this 12 team is in extremely good position when it comes to the point standings now. So they've been incredibly consistent again this year. I think they have one of the highest average finishes out of the entire Cup Series. That's kept them in the top 10 of the Cup Series point standing. So now with this win, Ryan Blaney gained the most points. Now, again, this Coca-Cola 600 had 4 stages in it. So this is the biggest opportunity to get points during the year in one single race, and Ryan Blaney took advantage of that. He gained the most points out of anybody in this race, 64 points earned for the regular season standings there, along with 5 playoff points for the win, plus the playoff point there for the stage win. Now in the NASCAR Cup Series overall point standings, Ryan Blaney is second in the standings now. He jumps from 7th to second in the standings. Ross Chastain was non-existent in the Coca-Cola 600. That was a huge detriment to him. He's been the points leader on and off here for the last several weeks. Ryan Blaney is now just 1 point behind Ross Chastain in the NASCAR Cup Series point standings. And this is the exact same position that this team was in nearly all year last year, even into the playoffs. Except they have a win in their cap, and I think the sky's the limit at this point as they go forward.
Yeah, remember, you win the regular season title, it's like winning 3 races. It's 15 bonus points that you get every round that gets reset throughout the playoffs. So last year when he got closer and closer to that, and then they couldn't quite get to it the last couple of races, now this year, he's basically 2 points from passing Chastain. I hate to say it, but Chastain's starting to disappear a little bit. I don't know what's going on over there at Trackhouse, but I'm okay with that. Ryan is consistently, up in the top 5 the last couple of weeks, and that's all he's got to do now. Just tick off some more stage wins to get some extra points, maybe get another W in there, and then, like I said, finish first in the point standings. Finish first in the point standings, get those 15 extra points. It's like winning 3 more races, and then the playoffs will look real nice from the setup.
Now that we've finished up our own recap of Ryan Blaney's victory, I thought it'd be a great time to bring on our special guest for this episode and debrief a little bit about the win and a little bit about his career. And that's going to be Tony Palmer, the race engineer for the number 12 Team Penske Ford Mustang of Ryan Blaney on the NASCAR Cup Series. Tony, welcome to the Team Blaney podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Tony, just to start off, congratulations on that victory. I know it's a long time coming.
Thank you.
Your first points win, at least in this position, I think, on the Cup Series. Just any quick emotions from that win before we get into a little bit of history behind your career?
I mean, it's a pretty awesome win to be able to win the 600, to be here at home. Obviously, like we talked about earlier, it was a super long weekend, but certainly worth the wait. It's a pretty sweet win to get for the team for sure.
So, Tony, you're a 2009 graduate of West Virginia University, where you got a mechanical engineering degree. First off, Dale Blaney, Ryan's uncle, was a star basketball player at WVU. I know you didn't go to school around the same time, but was there still any Blaney memorabilia around at the school, or did you ever hear stories going back to those years?
So, actually, kind of a small world. One of my really good friends growing up, his name's John. His dad was actually a trainer at WVU. When Dale played basketball. So I've always, known quite a bit about the Blaney family. I actually watched Dale run sprint cars at Sharon. I think we were in college. Me and my buddy went up there, and cool raceway. Got to meet Lou Blaney. It was a pretty cool experience, but definitely familiar with Dale and, his time at WVU playing basketball. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So I understand you played sports in high school, played football, involved in stick and ball sports. But what really got you into racing, and when did you kind of catch that interest?
So honestly, I was probably about middle school. So this would have been around the 2000, 2001 era. Just kind of started watching it on the weekends. Kind of really got into it. And actually, my freshman year of high school, in our homeroom class, the teacher told us, okay, write down on a piece of paper what you want to do when you grow up. We're going to open the senior year of high school, and you're going to see how much that's changed over the years. And I wrote down, at 15 years old, 9th grade, I wrote down, I want to go work on race cars. I want to go work in NASCAR. And lo and behold, I was, coming around to graduation, and they showed me that they handed out it was in a little envelope, and I read it. And it's like, well, is this still what you want to do? Like, of course, right? And I saw my homeroom teacher. I was back home visiting my folks years ago. It was probably like 8 or 9 years ago. And I ran to my homeroom teacher, and he's like, "So what are you doing now?" I told him. He's like, "Wow." He's like, "That's pretty cool. That's what you said you always wanted to do." And here we are.
That's pretty cool. So is there anything, so obviously you ended up going and getting that engineering degree. Did you do that with that mindset of that goal to work in race cars? And was there anything at WVU that kind of helped prepare you for that experience?
So yeah, that was always the goal. I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to go the race engineering route back then. So this was like the early 2000s. Back then you could kind of go more like a car chief, crew chief route. Obviously a lot has changed in the last 20 years. So when I was in college there, I was on the SAE, the mini Baja team, but I also did, there was a small dirt car chassis builder there in Morgantown. It's called Hassey Chassis. So I actually started out just sweeping the shop floor. We did dirt modifieds, like the 3/4 cars. So I started grinding old chassis with a torch and a grinder in the parking lot and kind of worked my way up through college. By the end, I was, hanging bodies, doing wiring harness, to suspension, the whole nine. So then I decided when I graduated, I was going to move down here. Actually, between my junior and senior years of college, I came down to learn how to be a pit crew guy. So it's actually how I got my first job at Randy Moss Motorsports when I moved down here after college. I just got my job as a pit crew tryout and started as a mechanic and a pit crew guy. Did truck racing for 2 or 3 years. Moved up to the then Nationwide Series for a year, and then I eventually went cup racing in 2013. That was my first job as an engineer. I had an interview with Bobby Hutchins, and he's like, you have this engineering degree. I wanted a mechanic job. He's like, you have this engineering degree, you could do a lot with it. What do you think? And I'm like, I don't know, but he talked me into it. So I went the engineering route, and then I was there for 5 years, and I joined Penske in 2018. The beginning of 2018, I was on the 21 car for a few years, and then Jonathan took over as crew chief, and then when he came over to the 12, I came over with him.
So you mentioned that story, and it's actually a story we've had multiple members of the 12 crew on with us, and it's almost the same thing. It's like at some point you guys take like a leap of faith and you just move to North Carolina.
Yep.
Well, can you talk about doing that and like the nerves involved in that, or just trying to make that dream come true? Like, what was that like at that time?
Yeah. So actually, when I was in college, everybody would ask me, so what do you want to do? And I'd tell them, okay, so what's your backup plan? It's like, well, I don't have a backup plan. This is what I'm going to do, right? So, and I worked at Advanced Auto Parts. Actually, I worked at a grocery store in high school, and I moved to Advanced Auto Parts. So I just want to get around cars more, right? Which ironically ended up becoming one of our sponsors, which is pretty cool. So I did that for a while. I was like, all right, when I graduate, I'm moving to North Carolina, and that's it. So I packed up my pickup truck. A guy that I had met when I was down here, learned to be a pit crew guy. I was a tire carrier for a few years before I moved over to just mechanic / engineering side. He's like, yeah, you can room with me when you move down here. You got someplace to stay. Packed up everything I had in my '97 Silverado. I had my clothes in the back, my bed in the back, a lamp, some stuff in the passenger seat, and that's it. I just moved down here. I didn't have a job. I graduated in '09, so moved down here around June. And I started out as just like there was a organization that did just like, basically they would put pit crew guys together and rent you out to ARCA teams, truck teams, whoever. I mean, we drive all day, go pit a race somewhere 8 hours away for $200, and then get in the van, drive right back to Charlotte. Do whatever you had to do. So I did that for the remainder of 2009. And then at the end of the year, I got a tryout at Randy Moss Motorsports, on the 5 truck with Mike Skinner. That was my first gig. Got the pit crew tryout, and just kind of made it from there. But honestly, it's kind of crazy. You just come down here with the determination. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So that failure wasn't an option. So just hammer down.
What were you doing over the wall? Were you carrying? Were you jack? Were you actually on the gun? Or
I was a tire carrier. This was obviously back in the day when we had 2 tire carriers. I was primarily a front carrier. I did some rear stuff, but yeah, I started out as a front tire carrier.
Now, those jobs have definitely evolved over probably when you did it to now,
sure.
Where it's like elite athletes that are going over the wall. Do you think that that you would have still been successful if you stayed on the pit crew side of things? Now, again, you were an athlete, at least in high school, or do you think that it was a good move to maybe go on to the mechanical and engineering side of stuff?
I mean, I would like to think that I could maybe still hang. Obviously, I'm not as young as I used to be. Obviously, it has changed quite a bit, especially now. The tire carriers got a lot more running than we used to have to do back in the day. So now that you're down to one, that certainly changes the dynamic quite a bit. Plus, the other side of the coin is, I mean, with anything with athletics, as you get older, I mean, your body doesn't keep up so much. So, like the long-term goal or the longevity of a pit crew job is a little different than having a mechanic job or an engineering job or something like that. So the long run is definitely has its benefits.
So
Now-
for the people listening, okay, so now you've evolved. You're interviewed and you've gotten the engineer job. What does that entail? What type of work are you doing during the week and then on race day as an engineer?
So a lot of different things. So primarily, a big part of the job is providing the crew chief with information, right? So he can make the calls and decisions that he makes. Kind of throughout the week, basically, I'll just briefly walk you through the week. Monday's kind of the first probably half of Monday, 2/3 of Monday is kind of debriefing the week before, right? So you'll come in, you'll break some stuff down, you analyze. Typically every Monday, me, Hassler, Ryan, and our spotter Josh will get together. We'll go have lunch, kind of do a little debrief. At that point, we've already broken some stuff down, some analytics, kind of recap the weekend, and then later in the day, you're kind of already moving on to the next week. Tuesday is all about getting next week's car set up, kind of prepping with race strategy kind of stuff, kind of getting your game plan for the week ahead. So yeah, a lot of my job is kind of like the behind the scenes, like getting Hassler the information that he needs, even Ryan and Josh, so they can make the decisions that they make on a weekly basis.
Now, you mentioned Josh, Ryan Spotter there for a second, and you were at JTG when Allmendinger won that cup race. Now, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Was Josh was spotting in that race as well?
Yes, he was a spotter. We were last night. We were in victory lane, sitting next to each other. I said, "You realize the last time I did this, you were standing next to me too." So yeah, it's been 9 years since my last cup win. So it feels pretty darn good to get back in victory lane, especially with a team like this and a race this big. It's pretty awesome.
So when you end up in this engineering role at the Wood Brothers, that's kind of the first time it seemed like where you could really just focus on that side of the game and not be a backup pit crew guy or anything like that.
Right.
Was that a big change to finally get a focus, or like I said, did you miss any aspects of being on the crew?
So it was definitely a little bit of a transition. So, I mean, coming from a smaller team to a big company like Penske, like stuff works way different. I mean, honestly, when I was still at JTG, sometimes damage stops, like as I sat on the box as engineer, I had a fire suit and helmet. In damage situations, I would still go over and help, tag out for pit crew guys because I had the hands-on experience and stuff too from the past. And once I came to Penske, there's a lot more of, okay, this is your job. This is the box that you stay in. So that's a little bit of a transition at first. Now, ever kind of since COVID, we've kind of learned, even with the bigger teams, to do a little bit more with less people. So like, for instance, sometimes I'll fill in for our tire guy and do tires. So I'll do tires and my job. I haven't done any pit crew stuff, I don't think, since 2017 was the last time I actually went over the wall. So those days are far gone. I mean, there's certainly times where I wonder, could I still hold up these days? But, I'm quite a bit older, and, the stops have changed a ton. Like last time I did pit stops, we didn't have the ride height rule. We had ride height rule, so the car wasn't super dropped. We had 5 lug nuts. We had 2 tire carriers. It was quite a bit different. So certainly different for sure.
You mentioned going over the wall in repair situations, and we talked a lot about that last year there, because there are some key instances at Daytona and Bristol where that was really necessary to keep you guys alive in the playoffs. Now, you said there's guys that already are kind of, that's their job now, but
Yep.
when they are doing that, they are going over the wall and fixing things. Are you kind of like chomping at the bit, like, man, like I know I can get over there and help fix this? Like, is there any tension involved in that?
So honestly, not really. So Ray and the guys are awesome. They do a great job. And honestly, last time I did anything like that, it was quite a bit different. We were actually allowed to put parts back on the car.
Yeah.
We could do way more back then. We had truck arms and completely different suspension. Now these guys are out there changing toe links and all kind of stuff. While there was a transition like earlier on, now I just kind of sit back and let those guys do their job. Some of the tools we have now, I'm actually able to like feed them information that can kind of help them out. But yeah, that's certainly changed quite a bit. Now Ray and the guys do a great job. I'm pretty comfortable now just kind of watching them do their thing.
Now on race day, like last night, are we talking about strategy as like pit call strategy? Are we talking about how to make the adjustments with air pressure? What types of things are you helping Jonathan with?
So a little bit of everything. So a big part of it's the fuel mileage piece. Um, it's gotten easier in recent years. We have some kind of telemetry stuff that helps us out a little bit. It's still not an exact science, but I'm able to tell him like so. So for instance, there in the second stage, we were going to be a little bit close on fuel. So I'm watching the telemetry, telling Jonathan, "Hey, we need to save a little bit. We don't. Um, okay, we're in good shape now. He can go ahead and run hard." So that sort of thing. When we need to pit, say you're trying to split and get the most out of your tires, it's easy to to do it ahead of time. But then as you get cautions and stuff factored in, that's like, okay, well, our split lap is this. Um, we have a lot of tools I can look at, like, okay, other people are talking about the same thing, so maybe the track's trending this way. So I feed him that kind of stuff, information. Jonathan does an amazing job of making these calls. I'm just basically just kind of feeding him information to kind of help facilitate that.
Yeah, it was funny because the question I was going to ask was about that fuel run because I listened to the scanner actually during the race. That's actually how I put my race report together, and I knew exactly what was going on. They were saying to save, to save, to save. The TV side was so funny because the TV side was saying, "Oh, well, he's only got short run speed, and that's why he's not really pulling away." And I was like, "No, he's not pulling away because he's trying to save fuel to the end of the
Right.
end of the run." And it really was amazing because at the point that you guys said it was okay to go, then all of a sudden
He was gone.
he was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're watching for what? You're watching for like his with his on throttle time, things like that. Is that how you figure
Yes.
that out?
Yeah. So we can watch his throttle trace. With SMT, I mean, everybody has access to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of watch. It's like, okay, maybe he's lifting a little bit early. Maybe at the end of the straightaway, he's not quite at wide open throttle. So we can kind of see when he's trying to save us a little bit. That's a big help. That's something we didn't have in the past. Back in the past, we'd say, "Hey, save us some fuel." And I had instances in the past, like years and years ago, where it's like, "Hey, save us some fuel," and they go faster. It's like, okay, you're not saving us fuel. It's like, well, they were. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you gotta go slow to go fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we can actually see, okay, yes, he's saving us. All right, so he's lifting early. He's a little slower getting back to the throttle. Maybe like at a speedway, he's only running part throttle. That kind of stuff is a huge help for us. Before we were kind of taking their word for it. Now we can almost kind of quantitatively say, okay, approximately what he's saying is.
Now, I mentioned about things changing again from the beginning of your career to now. Like I said, a lot of these stories about people packing up their stuff, go to North Carolina, trying to find an entry level job, and then working their way up. Is it still like that in this sport, or has the way that people are entering the sport now kind of changed pretty dramatically?
It's changed a little bit. I say you still see some of that, but I mean, I feel like just the way people look at things in general has changed. Like back when I was trying to get into it, it's like, okay, whatever it takes, whatever I got to do, like, let's go for it. We'll do it. I feel like now, like the younger generations feel like it's easy. Things are easier than it really is. Um, so yeah, I feel like it's changed a little bit. Like I said, obviously for me, I've been down here since 2009, so clearly we've seen quite a bit of a change. And I've come across a couple like younger people like, hey, how do I get in? What do I do? It's like, look, you've got to come down here. You got to be dedicated. You got to be willing to do the jobs that other people don't want to do, and doing the best that you can. Because what a lot of people are looking at is your work ethic and your drive, not necessarily what it is the job that you're doing. Because if you show that you can do the most entry level job really well, you can probably do the next job pretty well, and then kind of work up from there.
I know you did it while you were in college, but you talked about working at the local chassis shop. You talked about working on some dirt cars and things. Is that it's just another thing? If you're at your local short track, just start walking around the pits and start volunteering.
Yeah, and honestly, just ask to work for free. That's how I got to start. There was, like I said, I found the email address for the guy that ran the place, and I sent him an email. I was like, hey, listen, I'm really racing. I don't want a job. I just want an opportunity to learn. I'll work for free. I'll do whatever you want me to do, and that's fine. And honestly, by the time I graduated college, like I was doing everything there was to do in the shop. I was, like I went from, okay, what do I do with this camber shim thing? Or actually back then we had swedge tubes and all this stuff. It was very different. It's like, what do I do with this? what's a pull bar? What's a lift bar? I need a spring and this rubber biscuit thing. What do I do? I had no idea. To the point where it's like that stuff all became second nature. So the probably 3.5 years that I did that, I went from, hey, I'm really interested in this racing thing. This is what I want to do. Somebody steer me somewhere in the right direction to, okay, I got a handle on this. I'm ready to go and do the next thing. It was a great opportunity, and I'll be forever grateful for it.
Now, you worked on trucks, you worked on Xfinity cars, you worked on the last generation of Cup cars. What was your first impression on the switch over to the next gen car? Happy, sad, nervous, angry? I mean, it seems like across the garage, everyone was kind of all over the place on that change.
It was, I mean, I'm not a big change guy to begin with. I'll lead with that. It was certainly different. There were some things that's like, why are we doing this? Why we're doing it? As things have evolved and improved, it's gotten definitely better. There's pros and benefits to this car. I still think there's a lot of benefits that the old car had that maybe they shouldn't have just, thrown out with the bathwater. I think they were very, set on a totally clean slate. I think there's some stuff about the old car that was better. I think there's some stuff about the new car that's better. I think, ideally somewhere in between would probably be the best deal, but we got what we got, and I think it's improving, and we're just gonna keep going with it.
We talked a little bit about making adjustments on the car, and that was kind of a thing that happened throughout this 600-mile race at Charlotte. We talked a little bit about it seemed like Ryan had a really great short run car. Obviously, there was still a lot of speed over the long run, but it did seem like, at least from the TV broadcast, he could trend loose. The crew made some adjustments with a wrench in the back of the car throughout that, especially maybe one really crucial one at the end of the race. Can you talk about making adjustments on this car, and then maybe a little bit about the adjustments that were made throughout this race that gave it kind of the winning speed it needed?
Yeah, so I feel like we had a pretty strong car out of the box, and like you said, we did definitely trend a little freer on the long run. And this race, historically, as it cools off and goes into the night, the racetrack itself trends freer also, right? So it's kind of a fine line between balancing, okay, we need to make sure that, we're protecting against the long run. We want to stay ahead of the racetrack. You never want to get behind the racetrack, which is easy to do, right? Because you don't want to make those adjustments too soon. Okay, so the next thing you know, you fire off too tight, right? You fire off too tight, you lose track position, and then then you're clawing your way back. So the big thing is, okay, we need to make sure we keep the short run speed in it. We don't want to get too tight firing off. We want to protect against building too free, but then at the same time, we also know as the night goes on, the track's going to trend freer. So there's a lot of, he says, okay, I'm this amount free. Okay, we know what to adjust for that amount free. But then we also have to anticipate, okay, how much freer is the track going to get as the night goes on, and do our best to kind of anticipate how much that's going to be, which can be a little bit of a challenge, but worked out pretty well for us last night.
Now, you didn't necessarily make those adjustments right away, because with these pit stops, especially with the next gen car and how fast they are, taking that extra beat, that extra second or half a second to put a wrench in the window can mean 4 or 5 spots on the track. So there's a couple of times where they said, oh, he says he's trending free, they want to do an adjustment, but maybe right now is not the right time, maybe this is not long enough run to worry about it. What are the talks about making those calls, like on the pit box, and what goes into that?
So that certainly factors in, right? You lose quite a bit more time with this car than the old car when you put a wrench in the window. And honestly, Picker guys did an awesome job last night. Never got out of the 9-second bracket on pit stops, despite the fact that we stuck a wrench in the window 3 times. They did an awesome job. Basically, we knew we had a strong car, and we knew we needed to protect on the long run, right? So even if, say, we maybe lost 1-2 spots on pit road by putting the wrench in the window, we knew that the car was good enough, and Ryan was certainly on it last night, and we knew that we'd be able to get the spots back, and that maybe half second to 3/4 of a second penalty that we paid on pit road, we knew he would easily make it back up on the track.
This was go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, so the atmosphere, like, where are you sitting in relationship to Jonathan? Are you literally right next to him? Are you somewhere else near a computer? I mean, how are you guys set up in the box up there?
So more or less next to him. So kind of the way our pit box is set up, we have two on the left and two on the right. Um, I'm on the right side of the left side, and he's on the left side of the right side. So in between us, there's another computer monitor, and not really a seat there. So there's a couple of feet between us. We have an intercom, so we can talk just like the three of us are talking right now. So it's easy to communicate back and forth. He's got all kinds of data in front of him. We've got several monitors that I'll run them all from my machine, and like that SMT that we talked about before, he can say, "Hey, I'd like to see us versus the 45." The 45 is pretty fast yesterday, so I can from my machine I can dial it up real quick, and he can watch both drivers' telemetries side by side right there. It's the way the technology is. Our IT department stuff does a great job. Our stuff is really top notch, and we're able to do a lot with that regard.
Now, is there a war room back at Penske that you're also talking with over your intercoms and feeding data to and in other situations as the race goes on?
So we have a group back at the shop, race support group. Everybody's plugged in. Like I said, technology wise, we're super hooked up. There's some races that I'll do remotely from the shop. And honestly, it's really not much different than I'm there, other than not seeing the car in the pit box. But I've got an overhead pit cam that I can watch from the shop. We can talk from our laptop. Say we're racing in Fontana, could easily talk on the analog radio all the way across the country, sitting there right at the desk in the shop. You can be on the intercom from the shop, analog radio, our digital radios. We're getting the same feed. Honestly, the only thing that's really slowing behind is the TV feed. It's about a 6 or 7 second delay. Everything is pretty darn close to real time. So it's pretty awesome what we're able to do.
Now, you mentioned the pit crew. This was arguably their best performance of the year, best performance, and I mean they've been really consistent this year. But just when you said sub 10-second stops all day long, if it wasn't for the advantageous pit box that the 24 car had, I think you guys would have beat them off pit road majority of the time. You have a history of being a pit crew member. That was kind of the first thing that you got into the sport with. Does that make you more critical of the pit crews, or does it make you a little bit more understanding when they do have some hiccups or mistakes along the way?
Both, I think.
Yeah.
There's some parts that you're more critical of. There's some parts it's like, man, I get that, and like I said, the 24's box, having pit stall one at Charlotte is huge. I mean, you have to go a few feet just to get to the camera, and you're done, right? You don't have we lose speed, obviously, as you run pit road. You lose speed decelerating and accelerating back to pit road speed, right? They basically just have to decelerate. They don't have to accelerate all the way back to pit road speed. So they're already well ahead of the game. So, yeah, it's frustrating to have them beat you off pit road every time, knowing our pit crew guys are doing a darn good job. It's really just can't overcome that pit box. I mean, they would restart, or they would come in pit road fourth and just keep coming out first. The 24 guys did a great job on pit road, but the box was what was beating everybody. So yeah, that's frustrating, but I mean that's kind of the way the cookie crumbles, right? When you're picking pits, you're going to pick the best one that you can, and certainly some are better than others, and that's just something. That's just part of it.
Now, you mentioned 9 years between your last Cup Series win. This was 59 races for Ryan. You did at least get to, you're with the team last year when they won the All-Star race, which obviously really awesome. So you did get to experience this a little bit. But can you talk about the emotions and just waiting that long, waiting an extra day, even just this weekend, waiting for a 600-mile race, and then finally getting to victory lane and celebrating with this team you've been with for the last couple of years?
Yeah, it certainly makes it a little bit sweeter, right? You sit around the racetrack all weekend, in the rain, soggy, muddy, waiting around, just ready to get the thing going. And it's made that wait, I guess, just a little bit longer. But yeah, it makes it a little bit sweeter. It's certainly a special feeling, and it is pretty damn nice.
You ready to go out and get more?
What's that?
You ready to go out and get more?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We had a great card in St. Louis last year. I think we got a darn good chance of winning one this week.
It's like the lid's off the ketchup now, right? It'll just start coming out. That's it.
Absolutely.
So you're sitting up at the pit box there, and I noticed there's some people behind you, sponsors sometimes. I saw his girlfriend back there. how wild was that with them over your shoulders at the end of the night? Were they jumping on top of you guys?
I mean, yeah, they're definitely back there, definitely getting into it. But honestly, you're so laser focused on what's going on, everything just kind of tunes out. Everything just kind of slows down. And you're just focused on what's right in front of you. And then obviously once Ryan crosses the finish line, it's a totally different story from there. It's the celebration certainly begins, and it's something else.
Yeah, I told Steve I feel like I need to go back and watch, and this is just even as a fan's perspective, I need to go back and watch that last run because I don't feel like I, paid as much close attention. I was just waiting for something to happen. All right, when is this caution going to happen? When is someone going to hit a wall? When is like his tire going to go down? Like something fluke. I mean, guys were losing it, on their own during this race. I'm like, when's he gonna spin out? And like the last 5 laps, I'm like, just get to the white flag. Just get to the white flag. Just that it finally happened. So, I mean, for me as a fan, that's my experience. I know for a lot of you, and I just can't imagine the stress that you guys are going under, and not even the stress, but you got to be prepared to know what to do when if a caution did come out with 5 to go.
Absolutely, yeah. That's that's what we're sitting there talking about. It's like, okay, what happens when a caution comes with 6 to go, 7 to go, right? It's like, okay, you're out front, so you don't know what anybody behind you is going to do. If you stay out and you have 3 or 4 guys stay behind you, you're probably fine. You're the only guy that stays out, you're a sitting duck. So it's certainly something that we were thinking about preparing for. And honestly, hard to say what the call would have been, but really glad that it stayed green for us and got the win.
Who comes up when you say call? Who comes up with all these code words for the different calls?
So I'm the guy that does that. So basically, what I got is in one of my spreadsheets. I've got all of our a lot of our sponsors. So we have sponsors, colors, and numbers, and I have a little Excel program, and it's a random number generator, and it randomly sorts them every week. And that's what we stick in the card, and we stick on our notebooks, and that's what we go with. So yeah, it's different every week, so we can keep them guessing.
Yeah, I heard number 3 yesterday, and anymore I just wait to see what happens because I really don't know what number 3 is. Yeah, discount a couple times has come up, and I knew it was some sort of a 2 tire or no tire type of thing, but I know it changes every week too. I was always curious where that came from.
It's totally random. It's typically sponsors, and we just we make it totally random, and that way, like I said, just like you don't know what it is, that's exactly what we want, because we don't want the guys we're racing against to know what it is. Hopefully, we can catch them by surprise.
Now, lastly, the Coca-Cola 600's a crown jewel race. Ryan's first. Easy question. Does that make it a little bit more special than if you were just to win it at Gateway? Not just to win, you're winning the Cup Series, but if you were to win Gateway, winning a race like the Coca-Cola 600 just make it a little bit sweeter? Oh,
absolutely. 100%. It's definitely one of the, like I said, it's one of the crown jewels. And heck, it's the longest race that we run. It's very prestigious. And to be able to win that one is, just a little bit more special for sure.
Right. Locked in the playoffs. Don't have to worry about that.
Absolutely. That is a huge relief off our shoulders. Absolutely.
Yeah. Second in points by just 1 point right now. And I think setting up for a really, really great summer stretch ahead for this 12 team.
Sure hope so.
Well, Tony, I think for myself and Steve, we want to thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time, especially so soon after that Coca-Cola 600 victory that just came last night with Ryan Blaney and that Team Penske number 12 team. We wish you so much luck going forward, and hopefully you guys get an opportunity to compete in the championship for at Phoenix a little bit later this year.
Absolutely. I greatly appreciate it. Really enjoyed talking with you guys.
Well, Steve, we say this every single time that we have a special guest on the episode of the Team Blaney podcast that is a member of that Team 12, as you like to talk about it. Having Tony on the show, just another great set of insights, another job on the crew that he got to explain. And it's still that classic story, getting into racing early on. He went the engineering route, getting his degree, still made that, leap of faith driving down and moving to North Carolina. And he's made that dream come true. And now, along with Ryan and the rest of that 12 team, he's also a winner of the Coca-Cola 600.
Yeah, it was great to pull that off, get that interview in today. I wanted to have somebody from the team on. Everybody deserves a victory lap after a weekend like they had, and he was a great guest, great to have on, great insight into some of the things that go on behind the scenes. TV doesn't show everything. TV tries to give you some of it, but they don't have enough time to spend on some of that stuff. So hopefully you learn some things like I did. And, the more we get to talk to these people, the more we're really rooting for them, because you find out more about them. They took a leap of faith and they jumped out there and did something like riding on somebody's couch and working for free for a while to find out how to do these things, and also being smart enough to know, like, he went and got his degree coming into it, so he had all kind of options. And he's showing how smart a person he is on pit road. He's a dependable person, and somebody who's definitely there to help Jonathan with the strategy every week. It was cool to find all that out. So it just makes you wish for more and more success for all of them.
And what's been so cool about every guest so far, from Jonathan to Ray to Raymond to Mule, Dave Nichols, now to Tony here, every single one of these guys are pure racers. Yeah, a couple of those guys got some fairly prestigious engineering degrees, but they've all started out at the kind of the short track level and worked their way up. And that's the kind of that's like the Blaney family right there. And I think it's a perfect fit for them to be working on a team with Ryan Blaney.
Yeah, Fatback posted a picture this weekend of his victory with Juan Pablo Montoya in the Indy 500 years ago. So, I mean, Team Penske is just peppered full of people who are successful and know how to win races. So, and Fatback is over there with the Porsche program, and they won a couple weeks ago. So, everybody around Penske, they're winners. For whatever you want to say about this guy or that guy, forget it. They're going to figure out a way to win. And this weekend, they pulled off 2 wins in 2 days.
That was this past weekend. Let's talk about this weekend ahead as the NASCAR Cup Series heads to Worldwide Technology Raceway in the St. Louis area, but the NASCAR Xfinity Series is actually going to be out there in Portland. So they're going to be split across the country a little bit here, but let's go ahead and give you that NASCAR on TV report for the upcoming weekend here. The action is going to start on Saturday at 10 a.m. with NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying on FS1. You're going to be able to catch that. Hopefully, I mean, I'm hoping that they get this in. I haven't looked at the weather forecast, but I'd like to see what happens out there at that track at Gateway. 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, you have the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Toyota 200, also on FS1. And then a little bit later on in the afternoon, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, you have the NASCAR Xfinity Series Pacific Office Automation 147 at Portland International Raceway on FS1 as well. I'm interested to see what happens in that race at Portland, because it was a total deluge for that race last year. Yeah. It was kind of crazy. I know, Blaney fan Nicole was up there. That's one of the races in her home area there, and I think she got soaked. So hopefully, I think the weather is going to be a lot better out there in Portland over the weekend for that NASCAR Xfinity Series road course race. But the big race is going to happen on Sunday, June 3rd, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, the NASCAR Cup Series Enjoy Illinois 300 at Worldwide Technology Raceway. You can catch that on FS1. Not a lot of stats to look at here when it comes to Ryan Blaney at Gateway, because we've only run one race there, and that was last year's race. But luckily, it's a good stat. Started 5th, finished 4th. So already only led 12 laps as well. And teammate Joey Logano went to victory lane in that race last year. So this is a newer track to the Cup Series. A few years ago, it was on, I think, the Xfinity and truck level for a little while, went away. It's come back now. And it's not exactly a mile and a half. I think it's just a little bit under that. But hopefully whatever the Fords found at Charlotte, I don't know if it'll go over right exactly to this race at Gateway. But, anytime they can pick up some speed against these competitors, especially against the Toyota, especially against, basically Team Hendrick over there, it's positive. They're moving in the right direction. And Ryan's coming off of a win. I don't know if that means the rest of the year you're going to see them gamble a little bit more on strategy. But this is also a little bit shorter race due to the fact that it's a little bit shorter of a track as well. So, 245 laps, I think. 300 miles. What are you looking forward to this week in this race?
Because it's not really your typical track, it should be interesting, because it should throw everybody into the mix. It should be a kind of thing where anybody can,
it's shaped like a mini Darlington, but the turns aren't the same.
They're not the same. They're not as high banked, and it'd be interesting to see what kind of shenanigans take place. Wasn't this last year where the 11? And
this is Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin and Denny. Denny talks about Chase throwing a tantrum in this race last year. I mean, man, I don't know. I feel like Denny kind of threw a tantrum a few different times as the field came around, and Denny tried to get in Ross's way for taking him out. So
I kind of now looking at Corey LaJoie because that becomes the story of the weekend. Is of course because Chase is suspended and they're not going to appeal that suspension. So let's see what happens with Corey in that car. Hopefully he can make the most of that opportunity. Somebody was actually posting a thing about like what happens if he wins because he's in that car and he would be the winner, but the owner's points and this and that. And
he would qualify for the playoffs with a victory.
So not that that's going to happen, but I mean, it'd be great to see him come out with speed and be like a top 10 kind of guy. Because we know he can race up front when he has the car to do it. So that becomes kind of the storyline. But like I've also said now that once I knew this before, once Ryan wins a race, it's like just a tidal wave, they can just win 2 or 3 in a row, no problem now. Because they're just going to show.
Like we said, top 5 here last year, led 12 laps. So
so they showed that they've got what it takes. And the team is coming together. And everything is just going that right direction now. So, as long as I don't celebrate too hard during the week this week, I think it's going to be another good weekend to watch the 12 team in action.
So again, if you want to catch at least the Cup Series action on track, 10 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying on FS1, and then the race itself, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, the NASCAR Cup Series Enjoy Illinois 300 at Worldwide Technology Raceway, also on FS1. So let's jump back in time a little bit, one more time back to the Coca-Cola 600, and this time we're going to highlight the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. Shout out to Jordan Daniels, who's very active in the Discord, for not setting a lineup this week and giving us all a little bit extra of a boost. I think a lot of people are saying that now going forward, he needs to not set a lineup anymore because that is definitely the thing that made Ryan go to victory lane. So I think you're in agreement. Jordan, sorry. You're done. You're done for the year.
Just only name only.
All right. So my starting lineup, I tell you what, I bought into the Fords are not going to fare well ideology heavily this weekend, and I left all the Fords out of my lineup, and I only went with Chevrolets and Toyotas. So starting lineup here was Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, William Byron, and I actually had Denny Hamlin in my starting lineup, but when he got into that accident, I swapped him out, who had Christopher Bell in the garage. And Bell at that point was running really, really well in the race. I don't think it was at the point when he was sent to the rear yet. So swapped Hamlin out, brought Bell in. My featured matchups, I had Kyle Larson over Hamlin. That was right, just by a few positions though. I picked Chase Elliott over Harvick. That was wrong. I picked Truex over Wallace. That was correct. That was also only by one position. And I picked Byron over Kyle Busch. That was right. And that was by just a few positions as well. So I went three out of 4 in the featured matchups. Truex got me 40 points. Kyle Larson, unfortunately, only got me 9. Bubba Wallace got me 34. William Byron got me 48. Christopher Bell got me 27. So I had a decent week. I think I finished in the top 20, but I did not have as good of a week as you or my wife. You two were kind of battling back and forth there in the standings throughout the race, and she made note of that because she takes a lot of pride when she can beat you.
That's right.
But it didn't work out this week, but it was close. You guys were really, really close on points. So let's hear about who you had in your lineup.
Okay, so we had to play the game I had Denny and Chase, one in the garage and one not. So we had to play that game, who was going to have more points when they wrecked each other. So I kept Denny in and took Chase out. And that was a difference of 4 points between the two of them. So yay. I had William Byron, who gave me 48 points. I had Harvick, who gave me 35. And Kyle Busch gave me 35 also. And yeah, I put, for my last usage of Ryan till the playoffs.
This was the time to do it.
54 points, baby. So yeah, that boosted me a lot because the matchups were half and half here. I had Larson over Hamlin and he beat him by 5 positions. Chase Elliott, I had Chase over Harvick, and that didn't work out. I had Bubba Wallace over Truex, and that was one position.
One spot.
That's one spot. I mean, I could have won that that would have been 10 more points right there. And then I had William Byron over Kyle Busch. So half and half there. Like I said, it could have been 10 more points. 10 more points would have, what would 10 more points have done for me? I'd have to go back and look here, but
yeah, that would have put you into a tie for fourth.
Yeah, so that would have been good, but that's all right. It's still slowly moving up the board, getting closer and closer to those positions ahead of us. So,
yeah, so a good weekend, like I said, overall for us. I ended up in the 18th position with 188 points earned. We'll get to you in a minute here, but let's take a look at the top 10 in points earned at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the Coke 600 and the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. In the 10th position, Team Penske.
I was going to say, start with 11th.
Start with 11th. Oh, okay. I guess my wife Tara, her team's name is Rogers T. 11th position, just 1 point outside of the top 10 there with 195 points earned. So she was in 11th. In 10th, we have Team Penske, 196 points. In 8th, in a tie, we have Mez 12 and Blaring Idiots with 199 points. In 7th, this is a new one here, Little 7474, 201 points earned. In 6th, we have Racers F, or Racer SF, one of those things. 205 points earned. In 5th, No Hesitation, 207. 4th, Supermod, 209. 3rd, Pocono Lady, 216. 2nd, Moose Hunter, 1960, with 250 points earned. And this was a tight battle here for the lead, just 1 point more. Penske Fan, 24, 251 points earned, takes over the top spot in points earned at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. So congratulations to those folks that made it in the top 10 and also those folks that just missed the top 10 by 1 point. Congratulations to you as well. Let's take a look at the overall standings now. I'm going to scroll down and find myself. I am up to, or at least hovering around this in the 30s. The 31st position, I'm tied with Whip Wilson there. Team Blaney host Adam, 2,479 points. Now we're going to go in and talk about the top 10. Sam Speedsters in the 10th position, 2,603. In a tie for 8th still, Mez 12, Blaring Idiots, 2,621. You guys are tied in the standings. You were tied as well in the points earned at Charlotte. 7th, Go Larson, 2,624. 5th, Epic Chickens, 1916, and No Hesitation are in a tie for 5th, 2,626 points. And 4th, Christian Dana, 2,653. 3rd, Factory of Sadness 6, 2,667. 2nd, Penske Fan 24, 2,687. And in the first position in the overall standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League, we have Blaney's Daisy, 2,691 points. Man, I need to do some work. Get to 31st. I will at least like to compete with you a little bit. I know when it gets to the playoffs, that's kind of when I pick up a little bit of steam here, and sometimes I beat you at least in the playoff standings, but it is a long way to go. I mean, 8 races ago, maybe I was ahead of you with a fairly big advantage, but I just have not done so well in the races going on here. Mention the fact that Joey Logano won this race last year. Ryan Blaney, you can't use him, but fared really well in that race at Gateway. Is there anybody else that you are targeting, or as usual, we're going to want to wait and watch and see what happens in practice and qualifying?
Yeah, I've watched practice and qualifying, but you watch the 2-car now will come alive a little bit. It seems like they'll try to do everything they can to help the 2-car, because they would love to have all 3 of them in the playoffs. So they'll do some things, I'm sure, during the race itself, even to kind of keep an eye out for and help him if they can. So kind of keep an eye on that a little bit, because that's something that they did with Ryan last year. Really, once the 22 was in, they tried to work with Ryan best they could in any situation to get him out front and help him get stage points and everything else. So kind of look for the 2-car to actually do better than he's been doing. Like I said, I want to see what LaJoie does in practice with that car, because now he has a chance to drive something that should work better for him. And I can't wait to see what his skill set looks like with that kind of car. So those are kind of like storyline kind of things, I guess. I'd like to know what happened to Trackhouse, because they kind of fallen off last couple weeks. So it'd be interesting to see if they show up with some speed here.
Why don't I run down through, it's an interesting top 15 when I look at this, because again, we don't have much data, but I'll run through the top 15 at this race last year in 2022. Again, Joey Logano won, followed by Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, Ryan Blaney, Eric Almirola, Martin Truex, Eric Jones, Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, AJ Allmendinger in 10th. Then you have Cindric, Larson, Bowman, Justin Haley. This was a good race for him. And Austin Dillon round out the top 15. And also just a notable one here, Zane Smith finished 17th last year in the 17 car. I believe he was filling in because that might have been a COVID issue with Buescher last year. I think he was tapped kind of at the last minute. Mm-hmm. So interesting top 15 there with Eric Jones and Almirola, AJ Allmendinger, all those Justin Haley jumping in there. Haley does a little bit better sometimes on some of these shorter tracks. So interesting top 15. So I don't know. That tells me, the 45 didn't do that great, or the 8th car, sorry, didn't do that great last year with Tyler Reddick. So I'm not sure if Kyle, if that will, Kyle did really well in the 18, but is that skill, is that car, how's that going to transfer over? But he might be worth a look. Logano might be worth a look too. Just as the defending winner. And man, it just seems like even in this race, the 600, that 22 team will be off for the first stage or two. And then all of a sudden, here they come. And I made the joke that I'm like, I feel like they wait and see what adjustments 12 makes. And then they just get on that plan and then they drive up through the field.
Yeah. Yeah. They're pretty strong. Last year we were just a couple months into the new car too. So some of the teams that were, lesser funded were on a little more equal playing surface at that point. And I would say now we're starting to see the advantage again of the more well-funded teams. And that's why I like you said, the 16 and the 31, I don't see them having that kind of speed anymore. And the Trackhouse too, hate to say that, but Trackhouse really showed up well last year, but right now they're not quite the same speed wise. And I'm wondering if they're just not getting enough data and not keeping up with everybody. I don't know. It's really, really strange. You said Eric Jones there. Those guys are going to be out to lunch, unfortunately, because Chevy's going to bail on them the rest of the year. Jimmy Johnson even said that he only had like a couple hours of sim time, which is just totally unusual. They probably usually give Jimmy whatever he wants, but I don't think so anymore. So, till they get Toyota next year, like you said, I don't know if Legacy is going to have quite a very good year the rest of the year. Maybe Darlington, maybe Eric does what he did at Darlington again, but beyond that, yeah. So what's been interesting is that RFK and Stuart Haas have started to show up more and more in the last couple of weeks. All the four teams are getting stronger all of a sudden, and that's a really good sign actually as the year goes on. Absolutely.
Well, Steve, this was an action-packed episode. I almost don't want it to end because like I said earlier, these episodes after a Ryan Blaney victory are definitely some of my favorite. And I had a really great time talking you through the emotions, through the ups and downs of that race. Really awesome interview with Tony Palmer there, the race engineer for the 12 team. Really great to hear, like, as we said earlier, his thoughts and insights and a little bit behind the scenes on what happened during the race and what happens during the week out there at Team Penske. So I just want to thank everybody definitely once again for tuning into this episode of the Team Blaney podcast and sticking with us through this winless drought. We knew that win was coming. If you'd like to learn more about myself or co-host Steve, just listen to our very first episode that explores our Blaney racing fandom. You can interact with us on Facebook and Twitter at Team Blaney and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. And finally, we want to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Established in 2018, this organization supports causes like the Alzheimer's Association and UPMC Sports Medicine through fundraisers, events, and membership in the Blaney Bunch fan club. So learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're listening to this in the couple of days after Ryan's win in the Coke 600, I guess the Family Foundation on their Shopify store are doing a 12% discount to celebrate the win. So I'm sure that's going to last at least throughout the weekend. Get some new Ryan Blaney Family Foundation merchandise at a discount and support a great cause. So for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Check out the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.